It goes without saying that wrestling is extremely dangerous regardless of the promotion or the league that you are currently performing in. Well, today we've got 10 wrestling legends who destroyed their bodies for the business. I don't have to go into the whole spiel about how I respect these guys, so let's get right into the video. If you'd like to support the original upload of the content, click the top link in the description. If you want to hang out with me and the amazing flock over on Twitch and react to content live, click the bottom link. Let's do it.
Nobody gets out of professional wrestling the same as they got into it. That is just the way it is, and if you're good enough to get to the top of the business and stay there, you will be lucky to walk away with a decent quality of life and a body that is mostly comprised of its natural parts. For some of the industry's biggest names, however, the punishment they took in the ring may have led to incredible success, but it also left them having to deal with the very real after effects as they got older, the spotlight faded, and the adrenaline wore off. I'm Adam Pachisi from Cultaholic Wrestling, and these are 10 wrestling legends who destroyed their bodies for the business.
Ain't no way.
Join us. Number 10, Hulk Hogan. Turns out, when it comes crashing down and it hurts inside, it really, really hurts. Hulk Hogan was never known for his intense work rate or having a high-risk style. On the contrary, he kept it simple and low impact as much as possible. But a 300-pound man jumping into the air and landing arse first on plywood thousands of times has its consequences. More than likely, due to his leg drop finisher, the Hulkster has had to suffer with an agonizing back injury which required somewhere in the region of 10 procedures, including fusion surgery to make him somewhat mobile. Add that to abdominal, face and shoulder surgeries, not to mention knee and hip replacements, and Terry has been in and out of the hospital way more times than he did clean jobs during his decades-long career.
Brother.
In all seriousness, Hogan may have been paid handsomely and enjoyed a degree of creative control that few, if any, in the business ever get to enjoy, but he clearly suffered for his success, and it took a lot more than prayers and vitamins, and he did develop a painkiller problem for a while, to make sure he can still get up and about. Number 9, Steve Austin. Right next to Hulk Hogan in the top bracket of wrestling's biggest ever draws sits Stone Cold Steve Austin. Unlike the Hulkster, Austin did wrestle in intense style as far as work rate and bumping was concerned, and also suffered a particularly devastating injury due to a pile driver gone wrong. Not to discount the time the Undertaker tried to murder Hulk Hogan with his own needlessly reckless tombstone.
Ah, you got him, brother. Ah, you got him.
Of course. After getting dropped on that stack of dimes he called a neck by Owen Hart at SummerSlam 97, Austin worried that he would be paralyzed due to the immediate loss of feeling in his lower extremities. Luckily, the Texas Rattlesnake was able to walk out of the arena and continue to wrestle afterwards, but the damage to his neck required spinal fusion surgery, costing him a year of his career. After going under the knife, Austin knew he was on borrowed time and had to call it a day in 2003, when not just his neck, but also his back and particularly his knees, which had bothered him since his college football days, were telling him his time was up. The Bionic Redneck was able to come back for one more match over 2 decades later, having said no numerous times to other pitches due to his physical condition. Number 8, the Dynamite Kid. With his enviable quickness and agility combined with precision technique and aggression, the Dynamite Kid wowed audiences as well as locker rooms with a revolutionary style that combined techniques learned from the UK, Canada, Mexico and Japan. Dubbed by Bret Hart as pound for pound the greatest wrestler who ever lived, the Dynamite Kid was light years ahead of his time, vaunted for his state-of-the-art classics with favourite rival the original Tiger Mask. All that high flying and those big bumps came at a cost, however, and by the mid-1980s, Tommy Billington's gassed-up body was rapidly breaking down. Things came to...
Would they happen to have the Dark Side of the Ring episode on this guy? He was a little bit before my time. I'm not too familiar with him.
Ahead on December 13th, 1986, when the British Bulldogs were defending their WWE Tag Team titles at a house show. After simply jumping over Don Morocco, who was lying on the canvas, Dynamite collapsed to the mat in pain and was rushed to a local hospital where it was discovered that he had ruptured 2 discs and needed immediate surgery. He was never quite the same again, and in the years after his career ended prematurely, Billington was paralyzed and had to use a wheelchair due to years of back, neck, and leg injuries brought on by his uncompromising in-ring approach. Number 7, Terry Funk. There is a scene in the acclaimed documentary Beyond the Mat where Terry Funk visits his doctor who, after giving the Funker some x-rays, expresses his disbelief that Terry is even able to walk, let alone wrestle, given that he had no cartilage in his knees. That was in
How the fuck does that happen? Oh, no cartilage in his knees? Bro. Huh?
1997, Terry Funk wrestled his final match in 2017. It is a testament to the man from the Double Cross Ranch's toughness that he was able to keep going for as long as he did when his body was beyond wrecked from a career that began in 1965. In his 2005 autobiography, Funk, who also suffered cracked vertebrae, untold number of concussions, and all manner of other debilitating injuries in the ring, admitted that his body screamed at him every morning and it was difficult to even get out of bed, much less move around once he did so. The former NWA World's Heavyweight Champion had, of course, tried many times to call it a day, retiring for the first time in 1983. He was beat up back then, and his Indian summer as a deathmatch king only put more miles on a body that already had way too many on it to begin with. Number 6, Mick Foley. On the back cover of Mick Foley's tremendous first autobiography, Have a Nice Day, there is a picture of the best-selling author as Mankind annotated to show all the injuries he had suffered in his career to that point. These included a separated right shoulder, dislocated and fractured left shoulder, torn meniscus, torn abdominal, 2 herniated discs, 5 broken ribs, a bruised kidney, and, oh yeah, 2/3 of his ear being ripped off. And
Bruh. See, the fact that Mick did more shit after putting that book out, though, right? Like, I know I'm not just imagining that. Okay, if someone gave their body up to the business, Mick Foley, like, if you needed a fucking, like, example, just to point out, like, hey, by the way, Mick Foley, dude.
honestly, that's not even half of it. Mrs. Foley's baby boy was determined to give fans a performance every single night, and in his mind, that typically meant taking some sort of gnarly bump, like the stomach-churning Nestea plunge fall onto concrete. For the really big matches, Foley would take it to the next level, allowing himself to, for example, get thrown off and through the top of Hell in a Cell, or, for example, get repeatedly blasted in the head with unprotected chair shots, or, for example, look, we could be here all day doing this, couldn't we? In recent years, Mick has been open about the health issues he faces, including muscular, skeletal, and neurological damage, confessing that he is paying a steeper price than he ever thought imaginable. Number 5, The Undertaker. He may have portrayed an undead zombie mortician who felt little if any pain, but rest assured Mark Calloway was hurting something bad as early as the mid-90s. The wear and tear of bumping in that hard ring while maintaining that maddening WWE schedule was enough to break The Undertaker's body down to the point that, in early 1994, the dead man was forced to take an extended sabbatical due to a chronic back injury which caused him to miss WrestleMania 10. From there, it seemed like not a year would go by that Taker wouldn't suffer some sort of broken bone or torn muscle, though to give him credit, he usually just soldiered on through the pain for the good of the team. Seriously, if there is a part of Calloway's body that hasn't endured some sort of trauma, I would be amazed, and he's got the scars to prove it, not to speak of his replaced hips and knees. The WWE Hall of Famer wanted to keep wrestling for longer, but realizing his body simply couldn't do what his mind wanted it to, he called it a day in 2020 and now contends with daily pain and discomfort while walking with a permanent limp. Number 4, Kevin Nash. Jim Cornette once famously said Kevin Nash only had 6 moves in his arsenal, one of which was a hair flip, in trying to make a point about Big Sexy's supposed lack of work rates. Sometimes referred to as Big Lazy, Nash perhaps came from the school of thought that it was better to work smart than work hard, but nobody can deny the physical toll his chosen profession took on his 7-foot frame. During his career, Nash suffered injuries to his bicep, neck, and famously his quad, while his back and knees suffered greatly from the wear and tear of the ring and the road. After retiring, the former WWE champion shared an image on social media.
Oh, man. The reason I retired was I was deformed and basically crippled. This knee replacement and 2 years of rehab and training has been brutal. Just to get my hips to realign was incredibly painful. To the haters, was it fuck off or fuck off? The fuck off, what do you, fuck something. To those that have championed my recovery, I send my thanks and love. Yeah, That is definitely a deformation, right? That's kind of hard to look at.
Media showing his, in Nash's words, deformed and basically crippled body. He required a knee replacement and said getting his hips to realign was incredibly painful. The pain wouldn't end there for Nash, however, as in recent years he suffered with shoulder injuries and yet more back and neck trouble, for which he sought stem cell treatment. A pre-wrestling stint playing professional basketball along with heavy weight training can't have helped, but Nash's current plight is mostly down to his almost 3 decades spent in the squared circle. Number 3, Keiji Muto. Keiji Muto burst onto the scene in the mid-1980s for New Japan Pro Wrestling, and by the end of the decade had grown to international renown thanks to his work in WCW. Muto just blew minds as well as missed whenever he was in his great Muta guise, with moves like the handspring elbow and moonsault. He was one of New Japan's top stars during the 90s, but as the decade wore on, it was evident that the first-class performances and all those moonsaults was slowing him down. In truth, Muto's knees were shot, and in order to extend his career, he changed up his look and style, adopting a more ground-based approach and picking the Shining Wizard as a new finish while reserving his backflip for special occasions only. This helped him continue at a high level for a long time, but the knee problems didn't go away and he was forced to slow down considerably as the years wore on. By the time of his final matches in early 2023, Keiji could barely walk, but he managed to get through
2023? Yo.
them on artificial knees and can now finally rest his battered body. Number 2, Scott Steiner. There have been few specimens in the history of pro wrestling quite like Scott Steiner. Whether teaming with his brother Rick or going it alone, a young genetic freak set a high standard with a style that incorporated an impressive blend of mat wrestling, suplexes, and high flying. And Steiner was no cruiserweight, cutting a breathless pace and doing all manner of moves that required serious strength and agility in countless epic matches during his prime. The upshot was that by the late 90s, Scott was very much starting to feel the effects of all those big bumps and the accumulated wear and tear, especially where his back was concerned, and had to take time away from WCW to rest it before coming back as Big Poppa Pump. After WCW went under, Scott had to take some time off, not just to heal up his back, but also because he had developed drop foot syndrome, a condition that he still struggles with to this day. Steiner was then broken down further with other ring-related injuries, including a completely torn ACL and torn trachea, which almost cost him his life in 2007. He won't sell it, and to look at him, he appears relatively okay, but Scott Steiner has been through the ringer and then some. Number 1, Kurt Angle. After Kurt Angle broke his freaking neck the first time during the 1996 Olympic wrestling trials, a doctor told him that his amateur career was over. Kurt disagreed and went ahead and won Olympic gold with a broken freaking neck anyway, before deciding to try his hand at the pro stuff. Naturally, repeatedly falling down on something very hard for a living didn't help his neck issues, and Angle suffered 4 separate breaks during his WWE career alone.
Jeez, man. Nah, Kurt gotta be made of something else. Like, never mind a fucking a single neck break. 4 more in WWE alone. What are we? First of all, your ass need to wear a neck bracelet and a turtleneck everywhere you go at that point, cause your neck nah. Yeah, quick. We need to bind Kurt's skeleton with adamantium. It's done. It's over.
Incredibly, Kurt kept wrestling for another decade plus while battling serious addiction issues before hanging up his singlets. He suffered many other debilitating injuries in the process due to a style and philosophy that meant that he gave it 100% every night, whether he was performing at WrestleMania or a small house show. Today, the Olympic hero continues to suffer from a multitude of health issues relating to his glittering career and has expressed his regret at not retiring earlier. Knee and shoulder replacements, back surgeries, and more neck procedures have been needed to not only help manage the constant pain, but also improve Kurt's deteriorating motor skills. It takes a lot of sacrifice to be a GOAT, and few know that more than Kurt Angle.
Damn, Kurt. Yeah, man, that's... Ooh. It's always kind of crazy when you zoom out and then you, like, listen to like a list of all the injuries any random wrestler has, like, dog, there is no way. Like, and they would just be going through and performing while hurt half the time. Like, a lot of the time, those injuries just you kind of get brushed under the rug while they're still wrestling. Well, fuck, man. Still, nothing but respect for all the wrestlers who really get out there and, like, you know, they're putting their lives on the line just to do performances for us, so. I know my little dumbass ain't doing that shit. Don't find me in there. If you'd like to support the original upload of the content, click the top link in the description. I would very much appreciate it. If you want to hang out with me and the flock live on Twitch and react to content together, click that bottom link. I'll see you in the next video. Don't be weird. Call. Thank you so much to those of you that have made it over to the Patreon. I appreciate you.
I'm still hungry.